Alarm systems. We all know about the ones for security systems for a house, but did you know that a septic system sometimes will also have an alarm system, especially when you have a pump chamber attached to that septic tank? And it's one of the most important devices for a system that has a pump, because we all know mechanical things like to fail. Now, I have a user question that's asking me about how do I test it as a homeowner. So I'm going to go ahead today and show you a super easy way to test it, what to look for, what are some common issues. But the first thing we got to do is we got to look at the septic system. So let's go take a look here real quick. The very first thing we're going to be looking at today is our septic tank. We have our clean out and riser. This is going to be our clarification chamber, which clarifies all the liquid coming from the home and then into the drain fields. Super important to make sure we take care of this. We've talked about septic systems in the past, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today because we're talking about this guy. This is going to be a pump chamber. Essentially what the pump chamber does is it takes the water from the tank and then pumps it towards the drain fields. Pump chambers are very common when you have a super hilly property, or if you've got some kind of water table issue, or maybe like a neighboring well that's really close. If you don't have the space, or there's some kind of constraint that does not allow you to do gravity feed, you have to pump that water up. Otherwise, you're going to spend a fortune in getting those deep trenches installed. When you have the pump chamber, obviously you have to have a pump. In our state of Maryland, high water alarms are required. Now, not all the time were they. Back in the day, 90s, early 2000s, it was a suggestion to have a high water alarm. And the high water alarm is what tells you, hey, Mr. Homeowner and or Mrs. Homeowner, your pump's not working and we've got ourselves a problem. Call your septic guy ASAP. The alarm is going to talk to a float that's inside of the tank, or inside of the pump chamber. The float is just a little ball that goes up and down. And when that ball is up, the pump is on, and when the ball is down, the pump is off. Same concept when it comes to the high water alarm. We're going to take a look inside of there in a few minutes, but first we got to look at the actual high water alarm, which is usually in the basement, located somewhere near the electric panel. Sometimes it's going to be in the garage, and sometimes, if you're really unlucky, the contractor's going to put it behind a piece of drywall or somewhere else random in your basement, and the only way you find it is when it goes off. So we're going to take a look in the basement and see what we're working with. What we're looking at right here is going to be the alarm. So we can see that we have our little gray box, very common style. Sometimes they'll be big, sometimes they'll be small, sometimes they'll be black. Usually this is the one that you're going to see. We're going to see right in here that we have a test function, which does not work. And that's because they've gone ahead and set it to silence. Really bad idea. It should always be in the horn position. So we're going to go ahead and push in the test. Guess what? It still doesn't work. So that's not a good thing. Typically, you should be able to press this and hear the button go off. Turns out, just as I started saying that, I went ahead and just pressed this a little bit further over, and now we can hear it go off. So this is what an alarm should sound like once the float is up in the system. That is to tell you, hey, Mr. Homeowner, Mrs. Homeowner, you've got a problem. You've got to call your septic guy. Always make sure that the horn is on so that you know when you've got a problem. Obviously, when the septic's backing up, it's going to keep going off, so you can just hit it into silence, problem solved. If that doesn't work, you just pull the plug for the alarm and boom, problem solved. Now that we've got our problem solved, let's go pull the float and see if they talk to one another. Pulling the float should allow for us to have this go off outside, or what I mean by that is once we pull the float outside, this should actually go off. So let's go outside. Now that we have the alarm working the way that it ought to work, the next step that we have to do is we have to go ahead and pull the float to make sure they communicate between one another. To show you that any homeowner can do this, we're going to take a normal garden hoe, use this to pull the float. It's super easy. All you do is reach in, grab the float, pull it up, and it makes the alarm sound. You can test this out on your own. Trust me, it's really not that hard. All right, so when we look inside, what we're gonna see is the two floats. So we got the gray float on the left side, that's gonna be the pump float on and off, and the black float on the right side is going to be our alarm float. So what we'll do is we'll lay down, reach over, grab this bad boy, and make sure that the alarm sounds. So we'll hold it up for a few seconds, make sure it sounds, and then we're good. Now, take note that there's going to be electrical tape holding those pump floats in place. If that tape sits for long enough, it'll eventually fall off And then now you got to pull the float tree out, which is this white pipe, and reset everything. So we've pulled that float, and as you saw, not super complicated. Now you got to make sure that if you're pulling that float, you're making sure that you do not pull too hard and ruin that electrical tape. Sometimes they're going to have little plastic brackets that hold the wires in place. Not everybody uses that. Most people are using electrical tape, and over time it rots, so be careful. Don't panic if it happens. All you got to do is pull the wires up, retape it. It just is really annoying if you don't have a separate float tree, because the only way you're going to reattach it to the pipe is to disconnect the pipe and pull the whole thing up. Kind of sucks. So in this circumstance, what we've done is we've pulled the float, and as you can see, it doesn't really work. I held that float up for about 15 seconds, so we should have heard something or at least seen the light flicker. So that means somewhere in between that alarm and our pump chamber, that electrical wire is not making a good connection. So we're gonna have to get that solved so that way these people's alarm works correctly. This is why it's really important to make sure that you test this equipment so that way you know when that alarm's working or not, so that way you don't find out by having sewage go back into your home. This particular property, it's easy enough to fix, but if you have your house and you're not checking this stuff, you're playing a very dangerous game, and nobody wants poo water in their basement. When the float's working, essentially what should happen is that light should light up and it should sound. It should be loud enough to where you should be able to hear it in the kitchen, garage, entryway, somewhere that you're frequently going to travel or frequently be in. Most people, you got to cook in your kitchen. Most people, you either come in through the garage or you come through the front door, depending on what kind of house you have. So you want to have it positioned in a way to where you can hear the thing going off. Sometimes what can happen is you just have a bad float. That float may be full of water. It may not be able to function correctly, and they just go bad over time. So as a homeowner, you should check this stuff out every year, maybe every other 6 months or so. You want to just go in with a garden rake like I did, pull it up, see if it sounds. Press the little test button. Make sure the alarm's still on. Don't leave it in silence. If you do leave it in silence, you're playing a risky game. This is supposed to be a really, really easy process for anybody to do. It's not hard. That rake probably costs 15 bucks, if that. I bought it years ago, so I don't remember how much I paid for it, but it's next to nothing. Super easy to get a hold of, super simple. You can use anything with a hook shape to it. I recommend something with more of like a flat part, so that way you can grab the float, pull it up. You could probably get away with doing just a regular J-hook style thing, right? Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully you found this useful. And if you did, leave a comment below. And have you ever had any kind of problems with your pump chamber on your septic system? Leave a comment, share your story, and you might be my next video. Till next time, guys.